GamerNode.com. Today I wanted to take a look at what seems to have become a sort of classic go-to cooperative dungeon crawl game. Since 2010, the year its release, Dungeons & Dragons Castle Ravenloft Board Game, as it's officially titled, has been sort of a de facto dungeon crawl, tile-laying exploration sort of game for 1 to 5 players in a cooperative setting. Castle Ravenloft was made by a team of designers at Wizards of the Coast, and since there have been no fewer than 3 sequels: Wrath of Ashardalon, Legends of Drizzt, and the Temple of Elemental Evil. Castle Ravenloft, however, is what started the series, and I felt like taking a little retrospective look and review of that game would be appropriate. Why not? So the game is for 1 to 5 players. You can play it solo in a few of the particular adventures that are set out in the adventure book, or with up to 5. There are 5 characters in the game: fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue, and ranger, and each one has different abilities. They each have strengths and weaknesses based on their character class, and these abilities can be used at different intervals depending on basically how strong the ability is. There are at-will powers, which you can use all the time, utility powers, which sometimes exhaust, and daily powers, which almost always do the most damage and don't come back until a new adventure. The adventure book that supplements the main rulebook has a total of 13 separate scenarios that players can play through, and each adventure will have its own specific setup. You'll be setting up the stack of dungeon tiles in a particular way. You'll take certain tiles that are special and insert them at a certain point in this stack. Maybe you'll take 4 tiles and you'll shuffle a specific tile into those 4. Then you'll take that stack of 4 and put it beneath, say, the 7th tile in the stack. And this is used as sort of a minimally variable timer for each quest, so that it's going to be different each time you play. But the game has regulated the difficulty and the playtime based on what you'll be experiencing in that quest. So it's an interesting way to control for everything that, just by making these few little tweaks, it can give you a different experience for each of the adventures. Now, often what you'll have to do is go explore this dungeon, laying tile after tile, which mostly look the same, and you'll probably be either fighting an enemy or a number of enemies, or preventing an enemy from getting somewhere, or collecting an item, finding that item, locating a specific tile that something happens on. Oftentimes in the adventure book, it'll say, when you find this tile or when you find this enemy, read this text, and then satisfy this win condition in this particular way. And the way it works is, on each player's turn, you have a few options. You can move and attack, you can attack and move, or you can make 2 moves. If you reach the end of a tile that's out on the board, you'll draw a new tile from the face-down stack and you'll place it with the arrow facing where you came from. On each tile, there's a space where you place a monster, so you draw a card from the monster deck, take that monster card in front of you and place the figure out. You'll use that card on the monster activation phase later on. So each player controls a particular monster or group of monsters depending on how much you've revealed of the board versus how much you've eliminated. And each one of them has its own set of instructions so that it runs like a little AI. So a monster might be a tile away from you, and according to its card, it moves 1 tile toward the nearest hero and then makes an attack. Or if it's too far away, it might just move a tile, or it might stand still. If it's on the tile with you, it might do a special different attack. So each of the cards gives you very specific and clear instructions on what the character should do. So in that way, it's very fair to all of the players sitting around the board. Getting back to the sequence of events in a turn, if that arrow that was pointing toward the tile you came from is black, you draw an encounter card. And encounter cards suck because they're almost all universally bad. There's a minor handful in the whole stack that actually does something good for the party, and some that just don't have an effect based on the particular scenario. But for the most part, they're terrible. So you don't want to get those tiles with the black arrows, but you have no control over it. It's just kind of luck of the draw. What you do have control over is whether you move to a new tile on your turn in the first place. So if you move to a new tile, the monster comes out automatically, and there may or may not be an encounter card drawn on top of that because there are white arrows and black arrows. But if you don't move to a new tile, if you don't reveal a new tile in your turn, you simply draw an encounter card. And this is the game's way of saying, stand still and, you may get hurt. So it's up to you to decide whether revealing the new monster is a better idea than just sitting around and getting the encounter card. And oftentimes, you might need a breather if there are monsters already on the board that you need to take care of, but sometimes you want to really move forward. So there's that to contend with. And in a lot of ways, this game feels much like cooperative games, less like a real dungeon crawl campaign experience, less of an RPG experience, and almost more of just a mechanical cooperative game a la Pandemic, because you take your actions, you draw from the infection deck, it affects the board, you may or may not get one of those epidemic cards, which have an even worse effect, and then you take your actions and use your events to deal with what has happened. In Castle Ravenloft, it's an entirely different theme, and the mechanics of it are different, but the overall design philosophy matches. You're taking your actions, you are revealing a tile, revealing a monster, maybe revealing an encounter card, being attacked by the game, and then taking your response to the new state of the board. So it has that feeling. What it doesn't have are a lot of elements that would make it feel more like an RPG, more like a campaign sort of experience. So your characters can level up once. When you beat monsters, you take their card, and each one has an experience value listed on it. You'll take that card and you'll keep it in your possession. You can use that later to avoid an encounter card if you have 5 experience, or if you roll a 20 at any point during one of your attacks or your trap disarmaments or whatever, you can then use 5 experience points to flip over your character card and become level 2. Your stats are boosted a little bit, and there you are. However, that's not persistent. It plays like that till the end of that scenario, and then the next time you start, your characters are level 1 again. So there's no persistent growth. There's no perpetual character development in this game. The things that you gather, the treasures that you earn, they don't stay with you. There's no equipment to be had. As a matter of fact, the treasure cards themselves are one-time use items. They're blessings and fortunes. When you get the treasure, and it says, use this card to gain this, discard this card immediately. There's no equipment. There's no long-lasting benefits of these things. And there's no gold. There's no purchasing new items. There's none of that. There's none of that in-between element. So it is a very mechanical procedure where you're driving through this dungeon and going through the motions of hack and slash, essentially. And you're really just trying not to get hit, praying to the gods of the dice. There's 1d20 that you're rolling for everything. And I don't know about you, but in this particular game, every time I play, I roll really well for the bad guys, really poorly for myself. There are some ways that characters and their abilities can influence other characters or benefit from being near other characters. There's certain things that play off of one another. And you do have to communicate with your team, your party of adventurers who are going down there with you, all your friends around the table, because you're going to need to help each other out. Once characters die, you get to use 1 out of your 2 healing surges, which brings a character to life. And then after they're gone, if a character dies, the whole party loses, and that's the end of the game. So it does have this sort of, I guess I want to say, roguelike element to it. It's that you're trying and you're dying. Then you play the campaign again. You play that scenario again, and it's new this next time because the tiles come out differently. So that's really interesting in that it's sort of emergent. However, I do want to say that because of those other things, those aspects of the game that feel more mechanical, I feel like in the past 6 years since the release of Castle Ravenloft, there have been other dungeon crawl type games, other cooperative games, that do a little bit more to bring home the theme and to make the play a little bit more dynamic and interesting. And, one game is Wrath of Ashardalon, Legend of Drizzt. These have improved a little bit on the core formula. They've added new status ailments to your characters that affect you in different ways. They've added new and more interesting tiles and rooms and different things that happen specifically that give the game a little bit more diversity. But essentially these games all do share the same core design. So you can kind of say that the newer ones are going to be superior, but the base design is what I'm looking at here in terms of this review. And I feel like I've been negative, but that's not really what I mean. Like, you can have fun playing this game for sure, and I have, but it does tend to feel like you're doing a lot of the same stuff after a while. But if you really like miniatures, there are a ton of them. There are a lot. And they're, if a heavy plastic, I wouldn't say they're the best. They're not the most finely detailed. They're not super intricate, but they're better than a lot of different minis. So if that's something you're into, you get a lot of minis for cheap in the box. If dungeon crawling is really your thing, I'll say go ahead and try this one out. But as for a final review score from me, I'm going to have to give it a 3 out of 5 on the GamerNode scale. Good, solid game, but there's better out there in the genre that I would probably migrate to first, and more coming out as time goes on. I don't know about you guys, but I have a Dark Souls board game coming to me next year, and that I expect to be phenomenal. And Dark Souls. Anyway, this is Dungeons & Dragons, the Castle Ravenloft board game from Wizards of the Coast. 3 out of 5 from me. I'm Eddie Inzauto, GamerNode.com. Thanks for watching. If you like our videos, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. See all our videos as they come out. Follow us on Twitter. Like our Facebook page. And of course, head over to GamerNode.com for everything that we've got to offer to you. Until next time, thanks a lot for watching. Have fun out there, and see you later.